Cool, man. So you leave Miami. You're now headed down to the southwest border. You got your family kind of situated, so now you can kind of really focus on the job. Well, how was that transition going from Miami to the southwest border?
It was different, but it was good. It was interesting. I mean, there was, like I said, a lot of similarities on the border that similar to Miami when I was there, and out of control. If anything, like I was saying before, is the drugs to get to Miami, they had to go at least 90 miles or whatever be brought in, but on the border, they're just being walked across the border. So the flow is easier, and it's more, more volume, in my opinion. You know what I mean? and the cross-border crime, is out of control. It still is out of control to some degree. At least in Miami, they had to travel, for the most part, to get the dope up there. But the southwest border is a different animal. You
got Tijuana down in California. You got El Paso, and on the other side is Juarez, and then you got the whole Arizona frontier. And
yep,
it's been. I think they said at one point, I don't know if this is still true today, that 87% of the narcotics going into the United States and Canada was all through the El Paso port. Crazy.
And then you think you also got these families, they've been there for decades and decades. They cross over back and forth like it's nothing. Like if you're going, you're going across the street, in a town. So that infrastructure to be able to move product back and forth across the border has been in place for decades and decades. You know what I mean? So it was more, I'm gonna say more organized, but it was already in place, and it was just funnel, funnel stuff across.
Now that you're down closer to the border, are you starting to see like that criminal cartel element?
Oh yeah. Recently it's been increasing. I mean, just stash houses, they're not releasing everything in the media, but there's a lot of stuff coming across and a lot of people coming across that it's not, in my opinion, it's not a good thing.
When you were working down on the southwest border, working as an agent, did you see a lot of that stuff as well?
Yes.
What kind of stuff were you seeing?
Firearms trafficking and violent crime tied to violence, firearms trafficking and narcotics trafficking. And we set up operations or businesses or whatever to try to target some of the traffickers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we use the term firearms trafficking. I think there's a lot of people out there may not understand what that is. So what a lot of people, I think, fail to realize is that 90+% of the violence in Mexico and even south of Mexico, but Mexico, especially all the cartel violence, I think 90+% of those weapons all originate in the United States. So that means they're bought and sold and then trafficked into Mexico with the sole intention to be used by the cartel, to kill people. I think we've seen, especially, I know Juarez especially has been, one of the most violent cities, throughout time in the last 10, 20 years. It's been a couple years too. It's been one of the most violent places, and a lot of locals killed, a lot of cartel people killed as well. But all those firearms, they all originate from the U.S. And I know that's, again, one of ATF's main missions besides trigger pullers is to reduce the amount of firearms that are trafficked into Mexico.
Yeah, and along that lines, it's a very lucrative business. You can go to a guns show, on a weekend in one of the border cities and buy a rifle or whatever for $200 or whatever, $300, and get it smuggled over to Mexico, and it's worth 5-6 times that. You know what I mean? Because there's of course, firearms are illegal in Mexico, supposedly. So there's a huge need for firearms, for criminal activity. And it's very profitable. You'll see young kids, high school kids smuggling guns across the border and make money. You know what I mean? It's just a flow. When they call it the Iron River, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think recently in the last couple of years they passed some federal laws to tighten the noose a little bit on firearm traffickers, because it's such a big problem. These cartel guys will go out and recruit, 10 people who will then go to 10 different gun shops, buy one gun here and 2 guns there, and before you know it, this cartel network has now amassed 40, 50 firearms in a couple days, and then they send those guns south, and it's a problem. So yeah, so you're working on the southwest border, but you're still in the enhanced undercover program, right?
Yes.
So my understanding, that program, that was a national program, or is a national program, where you can live, you could be assigned to whatever field division or field office for ATF and still be in the enhanced undercover program.
Yes.
Yeah, you were talking about some of the crazy jobs that you've worked, at an undercover capacity. You were a tow truck driver. You bartended for a while. You ran a pawn shop, and then you guys did a tattoo parlor in Vegas that we'll talk about.
Yep.
Did you ever feel like you just had to kind of learn to become a chameleon to be able to fit into all these different roles?
You just try to fit the role, you know what I mean? And like I said before, informants are huge. They kind of set the table. They can lay down your story where so when the undercover shows up, the bad guy's already got an impression of who this guy is. You know what I mean? So, getting that set up, and then just dealing with people. I mean, it's human nature. You know what I mean? So you got to figure out just like if you went to a cocktail party, you got to figure out who's there and what drives them or whatever. You know what I mean? What they're all about. And I never tried to be the toughest guy or, the big badass or whatever. And I just try to relate to people as people. And I also used humor, to deflate a lot of stuff, potential issues or whatever. And I never oversold myself, because I looked at it. I never pushed too much too, because once I push you, I come at you too hard, too strong. I push you. And you get miffed, you get suspicious. I can't take that push back. So I always kind of was trying to be methodical. You know what I mean? Take my time and go where the flow took you. I didn't try to force the flow. If you get my drift on that. Yeah,
and I think there's this misconception too that when you work undercover, you have to have a certain persona or a certain look. I knew there was a guy that worked undercover for a while. Kind of a unassuming bald dude. He'd wore jeans and a white t-shirt, and he drove a bucket truck around, and he could buy dope from anybody.
Right.
And he was just, trying to be, just a regular old, crackhead man that just happened to, have a construction job, which back then when we were doing it wasn't super uncommon.
Right. One of the best agents in the history of ATF, a legend, is Dick Stoltz. Dick was one of the older guys. Dick looks like an insurance salesman. He'd look like your neighbor, the insurance salesman. He was totally unassuming, non-threatening. He was involved in some of the biggest undercover cases in ATF. He finished up doing a reverse, selling a Stinger missiles to a criminal organization. You look at Dick, and you'd never think he was an undercover agent. So it also depends on the target, and your role. You got to research it, just like the Gideon. You got to set it up and do your homework and figure out what's going to work.
Yeah, that's a good segue. You were about to talk about the Gideons. I was going to ask you about, the Operation Gideon, which was later just called Gideons, and kind of how those came about and what those entailed.
Well, the Operation Gideon concept was conceived and developed and sold to ATF by one of the same agents that years earlier developed a solution or a partial solution to the home invasion problem in Miami. He came up with the idea to send teams of undercovers to the cities that were in dire need of agents to combat violent crime. And he developed the logistics of it, conceived the logistics of it, developed the logistics, and was able to get ATF to sign on and to run these. And we did the first one in Phoenix, and that was kind of the test case. And I remember sitting having coffee with that agent the morning of the takedowns. We had made buys, and it was time to wrap everything up and lock everybody up. And we were sitting there, and we thought, we don't know if this is going to continue to go or not. I mean, this is a test case. And then as it would happen, we would go to the arrest of one of these guys, a couple of these guys, and it turns into a shooting. And then one of the bad guys is killed, one one's wounded. And then we just sat back and to see, hey, was ATF going to shut this down, or are they going to continue with it? And to their credit, they were all in on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell me about the kind of operational preparation and planning that went into those operations?
So first of all, they pick a city we were going to go to. Headquarters would pick a city you're going to go to. That was based on the needs or the violent crime levels. Or some cities would contact ATF once this got going. They heard of the success. They'd say, hey, we got problems in our city. Can you bring one of those Gideon operations to our city? So what you would do, first of all, you would gather intel, right? You would meet with the police departments. Say, what's your critical needs? Where's your most violent criminals? You would, meet with set up the infrastructures. We would bring along technicians, right? Because technicians are critical to the mission. They never get in. They're in the background. They do all the recordings, the undercover recordings, and anything to gather the evidence. Because you need to have the evidence to be able to present to a jury in a courtroom. If you go through all the trouble to do the case, but you don't have the evidence and have it right, it's a waste of time and effort. So you have those guys. You'd have SRT on the line. It's like bringing an army, all right? And you would do your research, and you always worked it jointly with other law enforcement agencies in the city. Then you would bring in informants who would go out and gather intelligence and make connections. And then you would bring in the operators, the undercover operators and the tactical operators. And then you would just go at it, and you would take it from there. And then once you're in a city and you're on, it's kind of like in the military, you're on the ground, you've taken the ground, then you start getting other targets, identifying other targets. You know what I mean? So it's based on the violence level and the target preferences of the cities that we worked in. I
remember you were telling me about Phoenix. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
Phoenix was evil, man. You had that cross-border connection, and it was just like Maryville is a section of Phoenix, and it's called Scaryville. That's just one of the violent areas. It was wide open because it's so close, the proximity and like these families on the border, they've been living on the border for decades and decades, and so that trafficking network is already set up, and it's just opening the floodgates. It was just violence, total violence, home invasion crews showing up to do murders and rip off drug dealers and just violent city,
So how did it work with the Gideon? You guys how long were you guys normally there?
They're 4-month details. Once a year, you could be gone for 4 months. And a cast of hundreds come in, that's an exaggeration, but a ton of people come in and work, give up it was, mostly all in the summer. So you had these agents who give up their whole 4 months, summer, miss out on all the family stuff or whatever, but they gladly did it because it was kind of like the Super Bowl of working undercover operations with ATF. And like success breeds success, you know what I mean? And people started finding out about it, agents and stuff, and they wanted to get on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You guys got to be picky on would you guys kind of handpick your teams of who went and who helped? And
yes, we had some input. Yes, because it's a tight knit. It's very stressful. Literally, it's 20-hour days as a minimum. You know what I mean? And it's high stress and it's very wears you out. So you got to have the right personalities as well. You know what I mean? You can be a great undercover agent. It's just like a military unit. You can be a great undercover agent, but if you got to be able to fit in with everybody else because it's people when they work together tight in a stressful situation, it can bring out the worst in people. So you got to be able to get along with everybody. Yeah,
and I want to paint the picture for those of us, for those people out there that are watching or listening. After what happened with ATF in Waco, ATF kind of changed the way they did operations, and they came to a pretty stringent operational planning. It's I don't know, 8 or 14 pages long. It covers everything from who's wearing what, who's undercover, the signals, the takedown teams, contingencies for shootouts, contingencies for medical plans. And so, you're doing 4, 5, 6 operations a day sometimes. And so you have a plan pretty much for all of those. So you have the informants, you have the undercover agents, then you have to have a cover team for the undercover agents. And, then you have, the tech guys out there making sure that all the tech equipment's working. And then you actually, you do the operation. And then when you're done with the operation, you have to get the evidence to the right place. And then, you have to get the, the audio and technical surveillance has to be stowed for evidence. And then, I think a lot of people don't understand the federal case side of the house. It's very paperwork intensive.
Yes.
So you've got these undercovers that are spending hours writing reports. And so, when you say you're working 20 hours days, 7 days a week, I think people think that's an exaggeration, but it's really
not. And we had a rule, okay? So no matter what time you got done doing a deal or making a buy, you didn't leave the office, the offsite, until your report was written. Because as things go by, it has a tendency, if you don't get it done today, it backs up, and then you're losing the time goes by and memory fades, or you're losing the clarity of what happened when you're writing your reports. So the policy was, I don't care if you started the morning at 1 a.m. and it's 12 midnight the next night, you didn't leave until your report was written. And they adhered to it. That was one of the strict rules that was done for a reason, because the whole operation, it's done to gather evidence and to put bad people in prison. So if you go through the whole exercise, spend all the money and all the resources and put people in danger, and you don't get a prosecution out of it, you know what I mean? Because you were lazy or whatever, that's unacceptable,
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to highlight because, people, hear like, oh, he's working undercover, he's buying guns. And, it sounds like kind of fun, exciting stuff. But there's a whole other animal of,
oh, yes,
the prosecution side of the house. And then, then you have the takedown where you're taking down, 60, 80, 90, 100 people within 4 months, probably spread out throughout the case. Then, like you were alluding to earlier, you got to go back and prosecute all those people. And you have, discovery and, you have to get all the evidence. And then, you have, trials in some cases or whatever, man. So it's, it can take a long time. So I just wanted to paint that picture for the audience so they kind of have an understanding of, what it took to pull off these operations. And you guys were going, you guys were in Stockton, California. You guys did San Diego. I know they did one in Baltimore, Phoenix. You were a supervisor in Albuquerque. I think that was the last Gideon that I remember. And so, I want to talk about that later, because I want to talk about kind of what the difference was. You've worked 25 plus years working undercover, and then, you end up becoming supervisor on a Gideon. And I want to talk about the contrast of that down the case. So that's cool. Thanks for explaining that Gideon piece. I think that's pretty cool. That's a cool thing that ATF did that a lot of people didn't know about, that had some really phenomenal results. So you're still working on the southwest border in between doing these Gideons and doing regular casework on the border in your office that you're assigned to. I know you still had a passion, or a passion for the outlaw motorcycle investigations. Did you ever end up doing more OMG investigations?
I did. I got an opportunity to infiltrate the Bandidos in Texas and New Mexico. Once again, it was a case brought to us by a confidential informant. Like I said before, so many of our cases are started, by confidential informant information that we get. So basically, they had a chapter in Roswell, and I joined up, became a prospect, and was appointed as the sergeant arms for the Bandidos in Roswell. And that was several months. It was going along fine. The ultimate objective was to get more undercover agents into the chapter in Roswell.
So you say that casually, right? Like, I think a lot of people don't even understand like how hard it is to just, you can't just walk into a Bandido or a Hell's Angel or an outlaw chapter and be like, hey guys, I'd love to hang around with you. I'm a cop. Can you kind of tell us, maybe at the on-states, without giving away too much tradecraft or whatever, of, kind of how that happened?
Well, it was set up where I did a chance encounter with the president of the local chapter. And of course, they're like dogs sniffing each other. I came into town on a motorcycle, and so the guy starts sniffing me out. We already had our backstopping set up and our story set up. And then he kind of liked what he saw. So he invited me to come out and start partying with the chapter. So once again, I moved into a undercover house, starting to see a pattern here, and set up my residence and my new life under a new name, and just started hanging out and riding with these guys, and then started going on national runs, Cloverleaf, down to the Cloverleaf chapter in Houston and up to Red River, and doing things that we do with an outlaw motorcycle club, and things going great. And like I said, we're going to bring other undercover agents into the chapter and then go after the national leaders. We were being set up for that. And then things fell apart. We had a national run in Red River. I was up there with the Informant, and Friday night, everything was great. Partying, went to sleep. Saturday morning, wake up. Informant's at my door. Very concerned. He had been grilled all night long by some bandidos in a locked cabin. Intimidation, threats, and I could tell he's a tough guy, and they could tell he was concerned, deeply concerned. And so I said, "What's going on?" He handed me a letter, and the letter had all the information of what we were doing in our undercover operation and what we had done up to that point. And at first I thought we covered massive cover team outside. So first I thought it was the cover team guys. Cops have weird humor. I thought it was the cover team guys messing with us, and, gave them that letter to kind of pull our leg. And so I called the cover team, and they said, definitely not. So basically they said, hey, they know what's going on. We had been burned. There was a law enforcement leak in the whole operation. We've got a pretty good idea who it was based on some control steps we had put in place, referenced the informant. And basically it ended up, because of safety concerns for the informant and the undercover, they shut the case down.
The undercover being you.
Yeah. So, it's just like anything else. You think everything's going great, and we're going to, get a victory for the team, and it turned to crap.
How did that feel, man? I mean, you had just spent 3 or 4 months of your life living with a bunch of, living on a night, like people don't realize now you get an undercover house. It's normally not in a nice area or a super nice place. You're away from your family, you're having to live this murky criminal life. And it's a lot of sacrifice. What did that feel like? I was
pissed. I was angry. It was disappointing, especially the fact it came from allegedly came from a law enforcement officer. But yeah. And that was very time consuming, because as a prospect in the club, I mean, you're obligated to we had to go to funerals, all the way in Houston. We had to go national runs, and you're just dogged out, you know what I mean? And it's okay if you're getting dogged out, because you can see the end, you can see the reason you're doing it, and you can smell victory, kind of, and to have it pulled out from under you by somebody that's supposed to be on your team. One of the biggest disappointments I ever had in my career, honestly. And it was done. According for the letter, it was done because of ego and somebody trying to position themselves for future benefits and a legacy, or if you want to call it a legacy. They put other people's lives at risk. Yeah, I was very upset.
Yeah, what a bummer, man. That sucks, because I think that's the closest that anybody's been infiltrating the Bandidos.
Yeah, and they're a hardcore criminal organization. They go back decades. I mean, they in El Paso. I had the original police report where the Chambers, the guy that they started the organization, killed 2 kids in El Paso because they sold them some bad weed or some bad dope, and he had them dig their own graves with a shovel, and said, "Prepare to meet Jesus," and shot him and killed him. And then look at and that was in the late 70s, and then now you look at what happened down in Waco. I mean, they're a violent organization. We had a chance to really do damage to them, but because it's some idiot with his own agenda, he ruined the whole thing.
Yeah, that sucks, man. Let's talk about a case that went really well. That you spent a good portion of time working as well, and ended up becoming a made member of that organization, which was your Aryan Brotherhood case, commonly in El Paso known as the AB case. Tell us kind of about that case, kind of how it came about. I know it's a pretty powerful story, and kind of how that case went.
Well, the FBI came to me and asked me to work the undercover on this case for them, which I took as an honor. You know what I mean? I was treated very well by them during the whole time. But so what happened was 2 deputy sheriffs in Cloudcroft, New Mexico. It's a small mountain town. There was a call for a 911 call for domestic violence on a woman in a cabin. And the guy in the cabin was a guy named Earl Flippin. He was president of the New Mexico Aryan Brotherhood. So they get the call. The first sheriff arrives. The second sheriff is his buddy. Sheriff's deputy is his buddy. He hears the call on the radio. He goes to help out, to back up his buddy. Unbeknownst to them, Earl Flippin's already killed this girl and wrapped her in a rug and put her in the cabin. There's a little girl there, probably I think she was about 5 or 6 years old, in the cabin as well. So the first deputy sheriff responds. He's killed by Flippin. All right. Second deputy sheriff shows up. He doesn't know his partner's been killed yet because his partner's dead in the backyard, shot in the head. So if he engages Earl Flippin, the second deputy sheriff responding engages Flippin in a gunfight, wounds Flippin. Flippin goes down in front of the cabin. The second deputy sheriff handcuffs Flippin, and then he goes out to try to find his partner. He finds his partner dead, shot in the head on the back of the back porch of the cabin. Understandably becomes enraged, comes back around to the front of the cabin, pulls his gun, and shoots and kills Earl Flippin. What the deputy that killed Earl Flippin doesn't realize is the homicide, retaliation, or whatever you want to call it, justice, is filmed by his dead partner's patrol car camera. So that deputy is charged with homicide, all right, eventually. So what happens, the AB finds out about it, so they immediately flood the town, start intimidating and make threats, and starts getting a little ugly. So they wanted to take out a green light, which is they wanted to kill the sheriff's deputy, number 2 sheriff's deputy that killed Earl Flippin, and it's revenge. So like I said, so the FBI came up with a plan, and they were looking, and they had basically another informant. He was a shot caller in the Aryan Brotherhood. He'd been incarcerated approximately 16 years. So they came to him. The other Aryan Brotherhood members had to come to him because of his position and get permission or a green light to kill the sheriff's deputy. Something ticked in the informant's head. He said, he told me, he said, I've been locked up 16 years of my life, and I did a lot of bad things, but something told me in my head, I just couldn't bite off on approval for killing a cop. So at that time, he was incarcerated in Santa Fe, and he said, he reached out to the FBI, that I got something I can help you with if you're willing to talk. So the FBI met with him, whatever, and they had to have proof he could do something. So there'd been another homicide in another county by another member of the Aryan Brotherhood. He had killed a rancher, shot him with a long rifle at a distance in the head and killed him. Harmless rancher, didn't pose a threat to anybody, but this guy had been hired by another rancher to kill him in exchange for anhydrous ammonia. So the FBI wired up the potential informant, put him on the prison yard, and basically the informant interviewed this guy that wanted to be an Aryan Brotherhood member that did the murder of the rancher, and it was like a job application. Said, hey, okay, so what did you do? Oh, you shot him in the head, and then what did you do? Well, I waited till there's no police response. So I went in the next day. I could see his eyeball protruding out of his head. And I stole the other guns that were in there. And I took my finger and I poked his eyeball out of the socket. Okay, 70-something-year-old rancher, right? So this informant gets all of this confession to this heinous murder recorded. So that guy is now going to be done on a homicide charge. So that was the test. So the FBI says, hey, are you willing to meet this guy and do this case? I said, sure. So go up, meet him. Okay, good. So they said, all right, we're gonna get him out. We need you to go. This is becoming a common theme. We need you to go get an undercover house. set up an undercover ID. All right, and you're gonna live with the informant. So comes to pass, they drop him off to me, and we go to our nice house, and we start living together.
So let me get this right, man. The FBI lets a dude out who's been locked up for 16 years. Aryan Brotherhood guy's been in prison, and you pick this guy up from jail, and he comes and lives with you.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
Oh, it was kind of funny because all my career, I always lived in crap houses. Okay, always got the crappy house, played the part of the white trash loser, and that was in ATF money. So now the FBI's paying for everything, right? So I said, okay, I'm getting older. I'm going to try to get a little smarter. So I'm driving around trying to find a place, and I look and I see this pool. Nice, beautiful apartments with a pool, waterfall, everything. It was awesome. I said, that's where we're going to live, okay? To the chagrin of the management of this nice apartment complex. So I pick him up. They turn him over to me. Here, he's yours. First stop I take is Walmart because he's got to get stuff. They gave him money. He's got to buy stuff to live with. You know what I mean? So I'm following him around Walmart from a distance, and I'm just watching him. Now, he's been incarcerated for quite a while. And it was like a kid at Disney World or a candy store. I just saw him head was popping back and forth, looking at everything, right? And the women especially, And so we get all his stuff up there, and then we're going to the undercover house, and he says, I want to get some chewing tobacco at the gas station. So I sit outside, and this is his first really interaction with any human being by himself since he's been released in 16 years. So I'm sitting in the undercover vehicle, and he goes to the counter, and then I see I could see the two clerks in there, a little commotion, two guys in there, something, like something was going on, right? And I go in, hey, you ready to go? Let's go. He's pissed off. You can tell he's angry. So okay, let's go. Let's get in the truck. And we're driving back. I said, what's going on? He goes, those guys, they were stepping up to me. They were disrespecting me. I said, man, they were young kids. They worked there trying to give you what you wanted. You're doing tobacco. But he was so ingrained in that prison environment that, hard for him he did, regain his civility. But yeah, it was just really kind of crazy to see. He was still in prison mode and that hyper aggressive, you know what I mean? Let's go kick your butt. You know what I mean? You mess with the wrong dude. I may be.
I can imagine that. That's got to be crazy for you to live in this. Do you feel like everything that you'd kind of done up to this point had prepared you for this next role?
Yeah, to some degree now, because he was invaluable. Because so the first night we go back to the house, and I was trying to. It was okay, we really hadn't spent a lot of time together before that. So I told him, hey, here's your room, go to bed, and in the morning I pointed to the bathroom. I said, in the morning, you can get up and you can teach me how to make coffee out of the toilet like they do in the penitentiary, right? I wasn't sure that he's gonna knock me out or he's gonna laugh. Luckily, he laughed. Okay, so I knew he's a good dude. But I'll be honest with you, first couple of weeks when I went to bed, I locked the door and I slept with my gun under my pillow because I just didn't know what was what. You know what I'm saying?
You didn't know if he getting out and he was after you. There's a lot of things that go on, especially in those. For a lot of people to understand, the Aryan Brotherhood's a big prison organization, and a lot of prison gangs still have a lot of control what happens outside of the prison, because a lot of these prison gang members are in and out of the penitentiary,
Yes.
you know, through the course of their life. So you might hear Pete use the term shot caller later on. Shot callers are normally, you know, prison gang leaders that make decisions. Like a perfect example is these Aryan Brotherhood guys. Even though they were in the free world, they still had to get permission from, you know, the gang leader who was incarcerated
Right.
to be able to green light, you know, to go after that cop. So,
Right.
you know, these prison gang. You have the Mexican Mafia, the Aryan Brotherhood. You know, there's a bunch of them now, but really do, and they're violent organizations both in and out of prison.
They're one of the most, if not the most violent group I ever worked, because they're all, to them, they'd rather be in prison, because in prison they're somebody. They get out on the street, they're really nobodies. They're just, you know, the dude living down the street, you know, cutting grass, whatever. So their identity is reinforced, and their ego is reinforced from being in prison, because that's their environment, and they don't care about going to prison. 99.9% of the criminals I ever locked up, they tried everything they could not to go to prison, but the Aryan Brotherhoods don't care about going to prison, and they're extremely violent. And then and a lot of them are racist. And then you mix that, throw in a little some meth to that, then you've got a recipe for a disaster.
So kind of how did this case kind of grow wings? He gets out of prison, you work, you know, you guys link up in the UC house. What happens after that?
We have several targets. There were several different homicides. So we went, you know, methodically. You picked, okay, we're going to do this conspiracy, the murder, we're going to do this murder. And he offered up me as the person that would kill the sheriff that had killed Earl Flippin. And so we had to go around to all. So New Mexico AB came under Texas AB. They got the charter from Texas AB. So basically, we had to go around to the shot callers in Texas and New Mexico and get permission, the green light to kill this sheriff's deputy. And the first guys I met with told me what he wanted me to do was get the sheriff, and his kids. He had a daughter and a son, and kidnap all of them, torture the father in front of the kids and the daughter, and then kill the father in front of the kids, daughter. That was pretty evil. So, in pursuit of this conspiracy or whatever, you know, to shut down the homicide, I would have to go to prisons, right, in New Mexico, Texas, and Colorado, and meet with these Aryan Brotherhood guys that were incarcerated, to get them their approval on the homicide, to get information on the other homicides that are already committed, and to gather, you know, to get evidence. So that would entail me in going in an undercover name into the prisons like anybody else and meeting with these people, which was kind of interesting. And so it ended up, basically, we had Texas AB guys come out to New Mexico, got their final consent, and then wrapped it all up. And a bunch of people went to prison, solved a bunch of murders, and it was definitely one of the best I worked, if not the best cases. And I was proud of it because I've never been to prison other than the times I went to play basketball. Okay, but that was, you know, recreational. But I had to learn, because these guys, they've been locked up for years, man. They can smell something that's not right. There's a lingo. There's like a way to talk, a way to carry yourself. And so this informant was invaluable, schooling me, and he schooled me every day. Don't say this, do this. We're going to do that. You know, he basically held my hand and guided me through it. Set the operation up for success. You know what I mean? So that was very unique to me and very, very, very valuable. But it was, you know, it was very stressful. They're animals. You know what I mean? And I didn't want to. But plus, I was representing ATF, so I didn't want to make a misstep, blow the case, and, you know, ruin the case, and have FBI pointing the finger at ATF. You know what I mean? Because there is that kind of rivalry. You know?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, and once we had the meetings and stuff and got the approvals, one of the proudest moments of my life, I was voted in as a made member of the Aryan Brotherhood. I obtained the rank of sergeant. And it was an honorable day for me because my parents said I'd never amount to anything, and there I was, you know. And then eventually, a few months later, I impressed them with my performance, and I was given the rank of captain. So that was quite an honor for us. And I'll never forget the day I got made. The crest of the Aryan Brotherhood, huge. We cover half your chest. So the informant tells me, okay, we got to go get inked up. You got to get your shield. They call it a shield. I said, well, that's real cool when you're doing it. That's cool, man. That's great. I can't wait. I'm excited. I start thinking, this ain't going to look too good when I'm, older. My gut's hanging down by my knees, and I'm at the pool on vacation with the grandkids or whatever, and I'm, and I got all this Nazi shield tattoo stuff on me. So the informant says, okay, I understand. And so he goes, but you're going to get recognition. So he went to Kinko's and had a little certificate made up for me and presented it to me. I said, that's a lot better than, and my wife put up a lot of stuff, but I don't know about a little stomach patch,
Especially because your wife doesn't happen to be white.
Exactly. That could have caused more problems than there already was in the house. Yeah.
I don't think the whole Aryan thing would have gone over well.
No, I'm not the smartest guy, but there's some things I can figure out. Yeah.
That's cool. That's definitely an interesting story. That's a good case. I think you guys ended up, there was 8 federal defendants.
Oh, more than that. There was, but they closed some homicides. And,
there was 8 homicides, I think.
8 homicides. Yeah. Yep. They didn't hesitate to kill. Yep.
Yeah. New Mexico, a lot of people don't realize, man, New Mexico's a wild state.
Yeah. It is. It's out of control. We always joke that, Mexico's the only place you can find a kid that's 18 and he's 18 years old, and he's got 10 kids and 10 felonies. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Part of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to hit another cool case that I've heard you talk about through the years is the tattoo shop that you guys did in Vegas.
Right.
You want to tell us a little bit about that? That was another long-term undercover.
That's a perfect example of what the UP could do, right? So they had a young go-getter new agent in Vegas, and he was doing some interviews of some criminals or whatever, and he had gone into a tattoo shop, and he saw these thugs and gangbangers hanging out at the tattoo shop, and he said, man, this would be a great way to target gangbangers, criminals, violent criminals. So he went to his management, and they were eager to buy off on it, but they wanted a senior guy to run it, you know what I mean? Because he hadn't been on long at all. And to his credit, he conceived it and he hit the ground trying to run with it, you know what I mean? So they asked me to go up there and kind of run it. And so basically I was the owner of the tattoo shop, and he was my underling. And it was one of the gangs we targeted was 28th Street. And 28th Street gang in Vegas, which has been around there for decades and caused a lot of problems. There's other gangbangers from California. But it was kind of an honor too, because some local cops were saying, hey man, these guys are all Hispanic. You guys are white. You're never going to be able to get over on these dudes. And we got over on them. And I brought a couple of guys up, other EP guys up towards the end, close it out. And we ended up locking up a ton of people. We ended up taking out 3 home invasion crews, one right after another, the same day, which has never been done. Prior to that, it's never been done since. And it really it locked up a lot of bad gangsters. And I think it kind of shocked the Las Vegas community, the criminal community, because we really did get over on them.
So can you talk to me kind of about how that case was born and kind of what you guys did and your kind of your roles and how that led into, all the defendants getting arrested?
Well, basically same thing. So we had an informant once again. Informants are critical, and he introduced us, and then we had the tattoo shop. We ran a regular tattoo shop. It was, Hustler's Tattoo. And it was, down from some of the strip clubs, and we just played the role.
You guys actually giving tattoos?
Yeah, we had a couple informants that were doing tattoos and piercings, and yeah, they were legit. It was a legit tattoo shop. and these gangbangers bought it, and it was kind of the tattoo shop was kind of their place to hang out, and they discussed crimes and politics, and everything was recorded, and we bought guns, we bought dope, and it ended up very successful.
How did you guys end up wrapping up those 3 home invasion crews?
That was the last day. Because once we started making, that was what kicked off the arrest. Because once that arrest was made, it was done. So we set them all 3 up, legitimate home invasion crews. They brought, there was the Vegas base, but they also brought some homies, gangbangers from California that are prior felons imprisoned, and we set it up, and we did 3, took them to the locations, and then they were arrested by SRT.
Nice. How long did that case take?
That was maybe a year, and then you get the trials after that. You know what I mean? The trials after that, which was very time consuming. Which, like you said, a lot of people don't realize. Once you make the arrest, it's really just starting, because like the work to get it prosecuted and get ready for trial is very time consuming and energy consuming.
That's a great point. So I think the tattoo shop was that was your kind of last big undercover case, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I was done. I was burned out, and my family was hanging by a thread. Yeah. And the last straw, we would go to the tattoo shop every night, SOP, right? I was Mr. Big, and we'd always stop. But guy would get pizzas, my partner get pizzas, wings, beer. We always had liquor. Everything was stocked to the hill. These guys would come in and kick it. And first thing we'd do is we'd set the chairs up out front, and then we'd sit up front in the chairs and we'd kick it with the homies. And they'd fill us in on what they'd done in local crime, what was the latest thing they were involved in, and this guy and that guy. And I got a call from my daughter, and she had a friend that would die of cancer, and she was very upset, and she was bawling, crying to me, and I felt so frustrated because I was on the phone, and there was nothing I could do. I couldn't hold her, And I thought, here I am with these crap bags, career criminals, predators, dangerous society, and I can't even help my own daughter. That was kind of the last straw. Yeah. I knew it was time. I'd done what I had hoped to do mostly, in my career, and I basically stepped down. After I got through all that, because the trial was lengthy. I had another 8 months for the trial, but after that, I'd say, I'm done with the EUP and doing undercover.
Yeah, I think that's something that's kind of often missed by society and people that maybe don't understand law enforcement, the sacrifices that are made. That especially just listening to your story. I mean, you spent months, if not years, away from home and missed kids' birthdays and games and all that stuff. And even some of these street cops, I still talk to. They're holidays, they miss a lot, and it's a thankless job, especially nowadays. Working in law enforcement, it's been demonized by whatever, the media or whatever. And there's not a police department and hell, even a federal agency out there that's not shorthanded right now. It's not cool to be in law enforcement. And it's one of these things where people don't understand. I mean, it's really the last line of defense. It's law enforcement, whether you're state, county, local, federal. I mean, it really is kind of the last line of defense before anarchy takes over. And
you're right.
I hear all this defund the police and look, man, there's whether it's federal agents or city agents, it's still a human, and there's been plenty of imperfect actors within the law enforcement community. But it's why I enjoy talking with people like you and listening to the stories, because there's a lot of people that did a lot of good, that impacted communities. I think there is no metrics out there that can help figure out what crime wasn't committed. I mean, you took, whether it was the tattoo shop, the Aryan Brotherhood case, the Gideons, whatever, man, there is no metric to figure out what crime wasn't committed because you took these actors, out of the playing field. How many people weren't murdered? How many people's lives weren't affected by drugs? Maybe the flow of drugs were stemmed, or they couldn't get access to firearms. I think that's things that's often forgot about in society. It's so easy to demonize, I hate the feds, or, ATF's coming for your guns, or, the local cops, all cops are bad. And I just, internally, for those of us that have worked law enforcement, we kind of laugh at that because we've seen demons, we've seen the devil, we've been out at night. We know the evil in society and what it's capable of. And I think you spent, a better part of your career working in some of the most, violent criminal organizations, that we can, fathom, at least here in the United States. So I just want to personally say, thank you for not only, your sacrifice, because you're a very humble person. People that don't know you, if they met you on the street, you don't run around telling everybody what you did. And, I kind of had to pull you on here a little bit and really pull some of these stories out of you, because you've never, ever been one to boast or brag or really even elaborate. You were, ever since I've ever known you, and you've always given the credit to, whoever it was, whether it's the techs, the informants, the SRT team to help you take down, the case agents. You've always been very complimentary to everybody else, and very rarely do you ever take the credit. I mean, I didn't even know you'd gotten some of the awards you've gotten. I want to kind of close out your career a little bit with two more things. I know you transitioned. You just kind of told a heartfelt story, I think, that I don't really want to take for granted. You had missed this time from your daughter, and, here it is, your daughter needs you, and you finally realized that you needed to go home. So you make this decision to kind of leave EUP. And so I think you promoted, right?
I did. I became a supervisor. And I thought it would be a great opportunity because there's battles you have to fight as a supervisor. I mean, as an agent, to get your cases done. And I just thought I could facilitate, make it easier for the guys and girls that were in the street, give them what they needed to do the job, that sometimes we didn't always get when I was a younger agent. So I understood where they were coming from and their motivation and how to get around stuff to get the mission accomplished. So I thought I could make a difference doing that. And I hope I did,
What was that experience like, going from, you were a go-getter. You spent your whole career getting after it. What was the transition like for you going into leadership? Because, I know like the agency doesn't provide a lot of leadership training. Did you rely, on some of the things you had learned being a military officer?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. You lead by example, and you take care of your troops first, right? You didn't always see that when I came up, you know what I mean? But then again, I fell back. I had some outstanding leaders, and coincidentally, not coincidentally, but, at ATF, they were ex-military, combat veterans. You know what I mean? So I learned from them. I didn't come up with any new concept. I just took the whole time. I just tried to learn from people what I could learn, and I just tried to be like them. You know what I mean? And hopefully, I did take care of my. We had a shooting. Last. Got to go out with a shooting. Before I transferred out of that job too, an agent was shot. But yeah, just try to facilitate, make it easier for them than it was for me. Not that it was terribly hard for me to get stuff done, but I wanted to help them.
If you had some words of encouragement to give to law enforcement supervisors, or just supervisors in general, I think a lot of leadership applies across not only first responders, but hell, man, a lot of leadership principles apply in, regular businesses, whether you're a plumber, electrician, if you're a supervisor. What kind of nuggets of encouragement, or, things that, that you, some life lessons or lessons learned that you could give to people out there that are in a supervisory role?
First of all, you lead by example. That means you eat last. The agents that are driving all over the country doing work get the new cars. You know what I mean? They come first because they're the ones on the front line, kind of like the military. I'm the guy, supervisor, I'm the guy handing out towels at the gym. Or you know what I mean? So you take care of the troops, you put them first. And, you got to be human. Everybody's different, but we're all human. And you got to be able to say, hey, I'm an idiot. I made a mistake. I tried to do it through humor. You know what I mean? I'm an idiot. I made a mistake, whatever. But yeah, you just, and you be honest, you know what I mean? And I think, you care for your people, and you take care of them. And I tried to guide them like I was guided. I didn't have any answers when I came on. Never been a federal agent. And I tried to make their transition from wherever they came from into being a federal agent, the ATF agent, easier on them and their family. Towards the end, I got kind of, hey, in the old days, you'd never say, hey, boss, I can't do surveillance. I got to go play and watch my son's baseball game. You'd be done. But I try to kind of, learn lessons I learned. Like, hey, you know what? This guy's going to be here tomorrow. Go take care of your family, because at the end of the day, your family's all that matters. And kids don't care, on your gravesite, whether you're ATF #1 agent. They care about where the family's #1 dad or mom. You know what I mean? So that's my advice. And what I did learn too, because we did a lot of crazy stuff when we were younger, like everybody, all young kids, and times were different. It's extremely dangerous out there. People weren't getting shot. Cops weren't getting shot like they are now. It's a very violent society. And you've got to do everything you can, man. And if there's any danger, I mean, I got lectured all the time. Hey, if they're selling dope today, they'll be there tomorrow. But we got to get them tonight, because then we got to get him, and then we got to go on to somebody else. But you really, I think, in this environment, you got to reassess the risk. You know what I mean? I came on in Miami. We were still under the shadow of 2 agents, Eddie Bandidos and Arias, were killed during Undercover, and Alex Diatra was seriously injured. So I came on into that shadow. Still goes on to today. We just had an agent last year that was critically injured in New Orleans, working to clean up a bad area where the good people were being preyed upon by these savages. And they went in, they took time, just like I did and many others did. They left their families and went off to fight the battle. And unfortunately, sometimes you pay a price, as you well know. And so it's been going on for years that I've been around, where these honorable people put their personal lives and their self-safety in check to go out and serve the community and try to make a difference.
Shout out to Carlos, man. Keep fighting. We're all cheering for you, buddy.
Carlos. God bless you, brother.
Yeah, that's some great points. I think those are some great words of wisdom. It sounds, it's not overcomplicated, right? But it just really does need to be driven home. There are people that I think promote for the wrong reason. I've definitely had my share of horrible supervisors. I've also definitely, like you, had some great experiences. I had a female supervisor that I didn't expect to be so awesome when I was a Fed, and she, Sarah was amazing, and she cared, and we got the mission done, and we worked hard, but she also was just a human. And I think that's such a thing that's so lost too. I don't know why it is when, people promote, especially in law enforcement, they just, they either forget where they came from, or it's almost like they forget how to be a human. And it seems so, really simple when you really are putting the welfare of the people that work for you kind of above your own needs, almost like a family member. People will go through a burning house for you. You're a piece of crap supervisor. Nobody wants to do anything for you. It affects the team, the camaraderie, the morale. So great points. I wanted to finish up. I know the last thing you did before, you promoted off to be a branch chief was you actually went back and did a Gideon in Albuquerque as a supervisor.
Yes.
Tell me what that was like. I mean, on top of, you did a bunch of Gideons, you'd work undercover for 20 plus years, assumed all the risks, responsibilities of being an undercover in the trenches. Now it's a little further on in your career. Like you said, the world's gotten definitely more violent. Albuquerque, when you guys went up there, was extremely violent, still is, in my opinion. And you get out there now, you're responsible for everything that happens. You're responsible for all these undercovers, all the SRT guys that are going out, on whether it's the buys, the takedowns. What was that like?
Well, first of all, I didn't volunteer for that. I did not want to do that. I was at the end of my run, and the SAC, Tom Atterbury, who was a great special agent, that's a special agent in charge. He was an old school kind of cop guy, and he give you whatever he could and supported us. So he called me one day and said, "You're going to do this?" I said, "I'm not." And he said, "Yeah, you are." I said, "Okay, yes, sir." And so we basically did the same thing. Went to the PD, and there was some controversy about that too, because we targeted the areas that were directed to by the police department and other law enforcement agencies. And we took a lot of heat at the end that we were picking on minorities. Same old BS you see, picking on minorities, going into the poor neighborhoods where there was no crime. But we only went into these neighborhoods at the direction of the local law enforcement who worked there every day. The one particular area was called the war zone, right? And we were attacked by the media and some of these politicians attacking us, racist and all this other garbage. But so, yeah, we set it up just based on the other ones, almost, the same cast of character. But now you're moving in the younger agents to come through. Like I would have some of my guys that were in Cruces, they would come up because you want to expose them to that. Because it's educational, but it's also very motivational. Guys and girls would come out and be involved in that. That's awesome. Because, and I want to be a part of the next one full time, And so, yeah, we set it up just the same. And, man, I tell you, Albuquerque New Mexico is a beautiful state, but Albuquerque's hell. We had an agent from Chicago work the detail with us in Albuquerque. And after there was a long story short, we solved a homicide one day, bizarre circumstances. And the agent from Chicago came back into the offsite and he said, it's official. Albuquerque is way more messed up than Chicago. Yeah. He couldn't believe how messed up Albuquerque was. Yeah. So we did.
Talk to us. I'm familiar with that. Will you talk through that homicide real quick?
Yeah. So, one of the guys, agents, gets a call from the informant and says, "Hey, I was out here at this 7-Eleven, and this guy approached me and asked if I knew how to get rid of a body." And then they're like, "What? What are you talking about?" Yeah. So they said, "Hey, go back and get more information." I said, okay. So the informant calls back, says, "Hey, yeah, basically he said he stabbed this guy and killed him. He's sitting right here. The body's right here in front of the 7-Eleven along the chain link fence, and he needs help getting rid of it." So highly motivated agents get together. They said, "Hey, all right, get in the car. Tell them you got friends. You don't do it. You got a couple of friends that'll do it." And this cracked me up. So they're getting ready. We do a quick brief. Going to run down there. And one of the agents stops. They got a pickup truck. And one agent says, stop. I got to get a shovel. I said, "A shovel?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to make it look real. You wouldn't show up to get rid of a body, bury a body if you don't have a shovel." I said, "March on. You're right." And we went down there and they met with the guy that did the murder. They asked, "Hey, why'd you do it?" He explained how he did it, and he stabbed him. And the guy was dead already, but he was leaning up against the chain link fence with a bunch of other drunks, and the cops were always driving by the place, and they just assumed he was passed out drunk. And so they wrapped that guy up, solved a homicide. Probably took about an hour and a half. You know what I mean? Yeah, it was just, and that's when he came back. The guy from Chicago, he goes, "It's official, man. Albuquerque's more screwed up than Chicago." He goes, "I want to go back to Chicago."
I remember hearing a story that I think halfway through, you guys were doing some takedowns halfway through, and a bunch of the agents on the takedown teams had come up, and they were staying at the embassy suites, and they all got their G-Rise broken into in broad daylight in Albuquerque, and those dudes are chasing dopers and gangbangers who had broken into the federal agents' cars down the street in broad daylight in Albuquerque.
Yeah, we had all kinds of break. It was just Albuquerque was off the hook, and they've been under, not to speak politics, but they were handcuffed by that oversight, the federal oversight, in my opinion. I mean, they were accusations, whatever. So DOJ comes in, it's DOJ. Now they're going to be under DOJ oversight. Well, the guy doing the oversight, it was almost like every time they were close to meeting and passing inspection and being able to run a gun on their own, there was always one more thing they had to do. Just, you're almost there. And I don't know if it was a money grab situation or whatever. I just have my suspicions because they really kind of handcuffed, you know what I mean? And people said, "Oh, there's a lot of people getting shot. The cops are shooting a lot of people in Albuquerque." Well, if you ever go to Albuquerque, there's a lot of people that need to be shot, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, I think people don't realize New Mexico, they don't have great resources financially as a state. So I think like their prisons, they let people out of prison way early because they don't have people the money to keep them in prison. I mean, that place is Mexico's beautiful country out there. New Mexico's a beautiful state, great hunting, but man, it's.
I have a good friend that grew up there, and he said, and he's a real hiker, outdoors guy, and he says it's a shame New Mexico's so beautiful, but it's inhabited by such dirtbags. That's a polite way.
Sorry to all you folks that happen to be watching this from New Mexico. We still love you guys. It's just stay as safe as possible as you can out there. So that Gideon, I think that was the last one that you guys did. At least I know while you were still on the job.
Yes.
I think that you guys closed out with over 100 defendants, didn't you?
Something like that. Yeah. Yep. Great.
Remember you saying you could throw a rock and hit 3 convicted felons.
Oh yeah, it's just out of control and great. Just a great. I mean, to see the guys, and I when I retired, I sent emails out to these guys that worked, and I said, I've never seen anything like you guys did up there. They were machines, professional, hardworking. It was like, if you're a football coach and you see your team, they're just boom, crank. They got it all. It was just so fulfilling, especially at the end of my career, to be involved in that one. And a great group of guys. Great. Here's another thing too. People don't understand, I don't think. There's so many people, not just the cops, it's not just the agents, but it's the prosecutors as well. I worked with some fantastic prosecutors in my career. Miami, I was blessed to start out in Miami. You talk about a hall of fame of prosecutors, right? These are people that could make gazillions of dollars, right? Millions and millions of dollars if they went private practice. But several of them, so many of them I met, they believed in the mission. So they sacrificed huge financial benefits to do what they believed in, taking bad people off the street, the common thread, you know what I mean? And they don't get any recognition, but they do from ATF, but there's prosecutors, have prosecutors that know what they're doing and are willing to prosecute, you're wasting your time.
Definitely a team effort. I remember, agents when I first got hired, like, we don't work for the prosecutor. They don't tell us what to do. And I remember thinking this, having this thought in my head is like, you can't really prosecute without them. It's a team effort. And I worked with a lot. I have similar sentiments as you. I worked with a lot of great prosecutors. We did some great cases, put some bad people. Not, I'm talking multiple convicted felons, shooters, just bad people. And I think that's kind of how I wanted to end, this conversation. I know, you end up leaving the Gideon and, you promoted into, you got a branch chief job and, you had mandatory retirement. People don't realize that too. You can only be a federal agent for so long. There's an actual age cutoff and they actually had to force you out and you could have retired years earlier and you stayed. And I think that's not only a testament to you, but just a testament that you really loved and really liked what you did.
I was blessed. I had a blessed career. I was fortunate, very fortunate. And I thank God for that.
I have a couple other questions I think, some people had sent to me to ask. Why do you think ATF gets such a bad rap across the country?
First, like I think you hit on earlier, and they don't do a good job or didn't do a good job of communication. You know what I mean? They don't sell themselves. But then again, they have a limited budget. It all comes down to money, a lot of it, resources, and they're handcuffed for a purpose. You know what I mean? It's a political tool. You know what I mean? This is America. Americans love guns, right? And any threat to that raises people's ire, And like any other organization, there's been mistakes, but ATF's an easy punching bag, right? I met G. Gordon Liddy. Hey, shoot him in the head. They're wearing a vest. And I read G. Gordon's book when I was in college. I thought I liked him. But then they called jackbooted thugs. President Bush, the father, he turned in his membership to that organization, shooting organization. And he's not going to stand for that. We're an easy target. It's the same, hit press. Okay, ATF's a bunch of gun grabbing thugs. It's not true at all.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't understand that there's two. I've learned this kind of, especially being around you. The ATF has two different missions, right? Yes. There's a regulatory mission, and then there's the criminal side. And those sides are actually separate in ATF. So you have the criminal investigators that do what you did. You were a criminal investigator, went out going after trigger pullers and traffickers. Right. And that gets convoluted sometimes with the other side of the house, which is the regulatory folks that they do the FFL investigations, and it's the regulatory side of the house that decides the firearms laws. And I think a lot of people don't understand that those laws are regulated by Congress. They're not regulated by ATF.
Right.
So,
Right.
for all you folks out there that, that don't agree with the firearms laws, talk to your congressmen, your senators, and appeal to those people, and, tell them to change the laws. It's, I agree with you. I think
It's a very
ATF
good point.
has got a bad rap. There's a lot of great human beings that work in that organization, a lot of hard working folks that do a very thankless job and very under-resourced. I think when you consider that the ATF has, this is not a perfect number, but I think it's around 2,500 agents, and the FBI has over 18,000, and funding and all that. We've always been a do more with less agency, and it still works circles around other federal partners. And I think ATF, one of the things the agency prided on itself, it stays in their lane. You have FBI who they investigate everything under the sun. We kind of stay true to the core mission of the ATF, which is, trigger pullers and traffickers,
Right.
going after violent crime, especially as such a small agency, going after, using what little resources you have to impact a community instead of wasting it, and I'm sure there have been, smaller cases that have been brought about by people, but that's the exception.
Exactly.
Definitely wasn't normalized.
Exactly.
Well, hey, thanks for spending the time with us. Thanks for kind of opening up your life's work to us. I know you're a humble guy, and I know this was kind of a mental stretch for you, but again, thanks for your 30 plus years of service to the community.
Thank you. Yeah, there's nobody I like more than cops and veterans.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Hey, and thanks you guys for tuning into this episode. I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I did. Again, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts on. We're on all the different sites. We're on YouTube as well. If you're watching on the YouTube, subscribe and like our content, leave us a comment, and as well as wherever you get your podcasts. In the meantime, stay safe out there. And if you can't be safe, be violent out here.